phrase creating hope through action, what does it bring up for you? You know, are there things, actions you've taken that have particularly inspired hope?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I first thought about it, my mind instantly went to a point in my life where I was, you know, could call it an all-time low, I guess, and where the action had to be quite a sort of drastic thing. I had to kind of flip my behaviours onto their head, but then I thought, you know, more lately, action has been a bit more sort of nuanced than that. You know, you think about the word action, and it feels something like it should be something very tangible, something that requires a certain amount of effort and something physical. But you know, with the last 2 years being how it is, and opportunity to look inward a lot more sort of readily available, whether that's what people wanted to do or not. Action for me was to go in a little deeper and not turn things on their head, not do something completely different to what I had been doing, but to kind of nurture the quieter side of me and sort of interpersonal relationships a little bit more, which was, you know, the last couple of years has been so testing for everybody, but for me specifically on a way of like sort of trying to stay connected with friends and family through a lockdown, which deprived me and deprived everyone of that. It made me realize that I need those people around me, you know, more often than I think I do. I mean, I heard the sort of expression introverted extrovert once, and I kind of feel like I fit into that bracket. You know, I love the idea of hanging around with people and seeing my friends and everything, and I get excited, and then I leave the house, and every step on the way there I'm thinking about how can I get out of this, because it uses so much of my energy when I'm there, because I don't know, like the sort of anxiety of wondering if I'm being judged all the time. I mean, you could call it social anxiety, you could call it sort of paranoia. I'm still not too sure what it is. But with the distance between me and my friends throughout the lockdown, and the ability to talk, you know, over WhatsApp or whatever, or just over the phone or on Zoom, it sort of created this idea that I didn't need to be sort of worried about it, and I could do it more on my own terms. And the action that I've brought through, you know, post lockdown is actually you know, sort of working on one-on-one friendships. Whereas, you know, my working life, I used to run bars, I was always in very big groups, and something about it just never really sat right with me. And there's something, you know, the action that I've taken post lockdown is to actually nurture those one-on-one friendships, and that's something I really learned how to do during the first lockdown. Because yeah, I mean, this, you know, when you asked everybody to put, you know, what it all means to them, you know, every single big word had something to do with connection. It had something to do with friends or family. And, you know, it's true, we need to feel connected in order to feel okay, to feel like we're part of it. You know, there's a comfort and acceptance and a sort of safety in knowing that people, you know, have your back and stuff. And you know, relationships have to be nurtured, and it's a tough one to do when you do get kind of socially anxious around people, you know. So yeah, rather than the hope in action being, you know, something that, you know, involves running a marathon or something, it's actually, for me, it's a little bit more sort of subtle than that this time, when I think about it. And yeah, the action I've taken is to kind of nurture the relationships that really matter to me as well, because that's the other thing, you know. I find myself talking to people during the lockdown who I maybe wouldn't normally speak to quite as much, and you know, develop a different kind of relationship with them because maybe they had troubles themselves socially to start with, and I felt like, you know, at the same time feeling very disconnected from everyone and needing that kind of human contact. There was a part of it that sort of was kind of setting me up for life post lockdown in a social way, which I found really comforting.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. I think, yeah, you've touched on something I can really relate to, this idea of the way relationships change during lockdown. I think you've really touched upon something quite poignant there that I think maybe other people can connect with, and finding, you know, being able to reconnect on your own terms and kind of nurture those relationships in a way that works for you, and also that idea of being an extroverted introvert. You know, that's mean, firstly, thank you for doing this today. Like, you know, it does take energy to do these things and to be out in the public sphere. So, you know, thank you for I guess pushing through, and it's a kind of action in its own way to kind of push through that potential anxiety, that potential fear, and find yourself in a more exposed space, but actually in a connected space.
Well, yeah, and also it's an action to accept that that's who you are. You know, I'm 35, and I've realised in lockdown that I've lived a lot of my life wishing I had different traits. You know, feeling like people around me who had these seemingly really great relationships and were doing so, you know, were always in each other's pockets and that sort of thing. I always kind of craved that. It made me realise that I was craving something that actually made me kind of anxious, and it's taken me a long time to accept that. But life is a lot easier when you accept those things that you perceive as flaws, and you know, that's how I saw that for a really long time. And you know, that comes down to comparing yourself to others, and maybe there was something about lockdown which was kind of leveling for everybody, made people think more about who they were and what they wanted out of life, and ultimately the things that helped me through you know, the sort of darkest time in my life were the things that made me feel better, not just in the short term, not that kind of instant gratification, but the things that, you know, to sort of echo what Brian said earlier, those things that require a certain amount of effort in the short term, you know, like thinking about your place in the world or going for a run or something like that, you know, where you reap the benefits long term. You know, it sort of leveled the playing field a little bit, lockdown, and definitely made me think about who I was, and without going back to the social thing, without that pressure of seeing that everyone else was kind of out there having these really great sort of powerful bonding relationships, you know, all that was sort of put on hold, and without comparing myself to that all the time, I was able to realize that, okay, it's not something I'm missing that at all. It's something that I've been watching from afar and wishing I had a little bit more of. But yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm tying myself not slightly, but yeah, it was for me the hope in action post lockdown was you know, the hope came from realizing that I was a certain kind of person and I'd been lying to myself slightly about who I am, and then the action was to nurture the relationships that I knew mattered and to care less about what other people were doing, you know, and that's kind of given me a lot going forward for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are really profound reflections, actually, just the expectations that we set for ourselves and how we, you know, potentially live our lives measuring ourselves against ideals that don't even exist, you know, and how damaging that can be. I think that's something, well, I imagine we can all relate to. I can relate to that, you know, those ideas. So I think that's really well, you know, articulated. And I mean, just to kind of bring in another side to this, your book, A Walk from the Wild Edge, that's, I mean, just the act of writing a book, I can only imagine that must be a huge, in terms of action, that must be a huge effort to put something together and to you know, to kind of focus your energy on that. I mean, what was that experience like, and in terms of processing some of these experiences?
Well, it was very much a game of two halves. So I started writing it 2 years before it came out, and I'd never written a book before, never written more than, I don't know, an essay, and I found it really difficult to balance my life and find time to sit down and put my thoughts on paper every day. And I made a really stupid call of going, well, it felt stupid at the time, of going traveling. I went to Southeast Asia when I still had tons of my first draft to write, and just figured that, you know, if I reserve 2 hours every morning to write, then I can go and explore this amazing place. And very quickly, the writing bit became the drag, and I wanted it all to be over. And I remember sending off that first draft and being really unhappy with it, and knew that my publisher was going to be unhappy with it as well, but just wanting to get rid of it. And then lockdown happened, and it was categorically the best thing for that manuscript. There's absolutely no way it would be. I mean, I'm very proud of it in a slightly self-deprecating, self-critical way, very proud of what I managed to write in the end. Mm-hmm. But if I hadn't had the lockdown, if I hadn't had all that mental space and physical space and the ability to sit at a laptop all day, every day, when there was nothing else to do, and really focus on it, then, you know, it's sort of saved it in many ways. And yeah, I mean, the catharsis that, you know, attached to that as well was, because I've been talking very openly about my mental health for about 5 years, and it wasn't until I sat down in front of a Word document and was like, right, okay, so this doesn't really work unless I'm really brutally honest here. That's what makes, you know, that's what changes attitudes. That's what's really powerful. And yeah, to crack yourself open and spill yourself out and examine all the pieces and try and articulate it in a way that's sort of palatable is very, very difficult. And the start of the book, it's kind of chronological. So it begins with this really awful period in my life. And I wouldn't go as far as to say it was traumatic to write, but it was definitely very challenging. And but at the same time, it was a very cathartic process. And it's a privilege really to revisit pivotal times in your life and agonizing over how to capture it. You sort of understand it a lot better. And writing is something that I've continued to do as a way to sort of understand my own thought processes, I guess. And it's something I didn't really do before the book, but it's something I do very regularly now. Only just, you know, not to turn it into a commodity anymore, but just to kind of understand my own thoughts. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely an action that I've taken over the last couple of years. And anyone who can stand being on their own for an hour a day and looking inward, I would say it's a very worthwhile thing to do.